Well, hi, everybody. Welcome to Afterburner. I'm Bill Whittle. Well, it's the beginning of the year. Time to endure the torture of listening to other people's New Year's resolutions, preparatory to bearing the pain of ignoring your own. You know, I've always felt it was a good deal easier to offer advice on how to improve the lives of 318 million other people than to act on the advice on how to improve my own. So if I were to offer a New Year's resolution for the United States of America, it would be just one. As this republic gets bigger and bigger, its future seems to grow smaller and smaller. So I believe America's grandest and most glorious and largest days are still ahead of her, but only if we think small. Yeah, you heard me. America, the land of thinking big, can in fact enter a golden age of thinking big and doing big things, but only once we get in the habit of thinking small. Now, my conservative resolution for thinking small is not the same as the tedious, shriveled, depressing, progressive vision of thinking small. You know, a world inhabited by a few 100,000 planet-friendly humans living in Gaia-approved thatch huts, breading 100% vegan cow patties for warmth, eating their sustainable algae cakes, and working Saturdays and Sundays to improve the wetlands habitat of the Guatemalan water snake. Now, my vision of thinking small is a future of smart, independent, self-reliant, brilliantly educated, steely-eyed missile men and cool, capable, short-skirt, long-jacket women walking on the moon, jetpacking to their winter homes in the mountains, and generally doing whatever their magnificent little hearts desire. Now, there's not a problem this country faces that when you get right down to brass tacks is not caused by being structurally too large. So here's how you win big by thinking small. Education in this country has become a disgrace. Back in the frugal days of one-room schoolhouses, we produced classically educated young men and women who knew not what to think, but how to think. Now, in today's multi-million-dollar computer labs, they're spoon-fed progressive mush, and it turns their brains and their hearts into the same progressive mush for future generations of these helpless, left-wing man-child types and trigger-warning hysterical baby girls. So just get them out of there. Just walk away from the giant and growing Common Core state-sponsored stupidity and into a smaller setting, much smaller. Establish a local, and local means extended neighborhood-sized educational network. Then rent, using your own abilities to find bargains, a small but comfortable space. Then rotate the teaching responsibilities among the people of that neighborhood once the participants have mutually agreed what a child needs in order to become educated. Then, and this is the critical part, take full advantage of the #1 untapped resource in America, and that'd be our nation's retired people. Have economics taught by people with a half century as a CPA. Have anatomy taught by retired nurses, chemistry taught by one-time chemical engineers. Just watch what happens. Now, in terms of energy, this nation's energy net is far too vulnerable, far too old, and far too expensive, so it's time to get off the grid. Solar and wind power, which is pretty much useless on a mega scale, can be efficient energy savers to do things like pre-warm your hot water on your own house. Same for wind if you live in a windy place. Invest to make your house gather as much free energy as you can afford, because you're going to see that money back again. And then insist on small power systems, big enough to power a small community and no larger. Things like thorium reactors, just as one example, are physically incapable of meltdowns, as are new generations of self-contained classical nuclear power systems produce enough energy, enough megawatts to power 10 or 100, perhaps 1,000 homes, because huge numbers of small energy plants are more reliable, and despite economies of scale, they're less expensive than small numbers of huge plants, which aren't being built anyway. Opt into a small, that would be local, clean and safe nuclear or natural gas or other source, and you can do what your dad always warned you against doing. You can leave the doors open and heat or air condition the entire outside. Now, as big city police forces become more and more heavily armed, more and more militarized, and more apart from the communities they protect, and still almost exclusively with honor and courage serve, the answer, again, is to think small. Local policemen on routine patrol, derived from and familiar with the neighborhood, and often able to detect problems before they even become crimes. Then you could have regional, that is maybe spanning a few close communities. Regional areas can provide a fast-reacting, more heavily armed and better trained forces that can quickly be on site for some of the more serious problems, but anything larger. And it's time for the National Guard. You remember, citizen soldiers, the actual military, not a militarized standing police army. And of course, the best way to reduce crime in your neighborhood is to think the ultimate small, and that's to make firearm training and personal self-defense, which are mental skills and emotional discipline more than actual physical technique. Make those one of those things that your child needs to know before they graduate from your neighborhood schools. You know, instead of hours-long waits at places like JFK and LAX and Dallas International with all of the TSA intrusions and crowds and long traffic-plagued drives and all the rest, the future of transportation by air can be, thanks to the information age, can lie in the network of 13,000 local airports and new generations of existing shared ownership fleets of small, fast, efficient, relatively inexpensive jets. Just think of them as like a taxi or an Uber service. Going to an airport 10 minutes from your house and then arriving at one 10 minutes from your destination cuts hours and hours of travel time, which, even though it's not in the air, is still exhausting. Anyone who's ever walked out to a private jet even once, shook hands with the pilot, handed over the luggage, and they just got on board and headed straight to where they were going, knows that this is the way to travel. Now, we could do this all day, obviously, but the single greatest way to win big by thinking small is to decentralize federal political power. You know, at least 2/3 of the roughly $4,000 billion the federal government coerces from you every year and then wastes and spends every year is not even to run the government or defense. It's wealth redistribution in the form of entitlement programs. So stop. Just stop it. Just stop paying Washington most of what we pay Washington for, which is to buy votes by providing benefits to one person paid for by the work from another. I'm not saying there shouldn't be social benefits or aid programs, but all of these social benefits need to be handled on the state level, and that would be the highest level, because the more local that money remains, the better, cheaper, and more effective that aid will be required to be. Now, if you do that, as with gambling or gun laws or state taxes and all the rest, people will be able to vote with their feet. They'll be able to live the kind of lives they want to lead. That's the whole point, isn't it? So where do you want to live? California or Texas? Which culture do you like better? See, we call that freedom. And the more states there are, the more choices you're going to have. So if California wants to split into 5 or 6 different states, that means San Francisco can still go broke and insane under Pelosi, and New York City can still go broke and insane under de Blasio, but the rest of the sensible people in those states no longer have to pay for it. They can have a sensible state of their own. It's pretty easy, really. Think small and live large. So, in closing, let me just paraphrase that great American politician, Jebediah Springfield. The smallest structures embiggen the largest dreams. So, get out there, think small, and embiggen yours.